Lieutenant Hana was halfway through her coffee when her console lit up with a pattern she had never seen before. She set down her cup and leaned forward, her eyes narrowing at the strange frequency. In her 6 years, as a communications specialist aboard the United Earth Fleet Command Station Horizon's Edge, she had seen thousands of signals. None of them looked like this. "That's impossible," she whispered to herself. The station orbited Neptune, far from Earth but close enough to monitor the outer edges of human-controlled space. It was a quiet posting. Most nights, Hana spent her shifts listening to the empty static of deep space. But tonight was different. She ran the signal through 3 different analysis programs. Each one gave her the same answer. The signal was coming from space. Hana's heart began to beat faster. The collective had refused all contact with humanity for over 40 years. They called humans dangerous primitives, monsters born on a planet so harsh that no civilized species could survive there. They had blocked every attempt at diplomacy. They had even fired warning shots at human exploration vessels that came too close to their borders. And now they were sending a distress signal. Hana pressed the emergency alert button on her console. Within minutes, Admiral Park Ho walked into the command center. He was a tall man in his late 50s, with gray hair cut short and calm eyes that had seen too many battles. He moved without hurry, but there was a sharpness to his gaze that told Hana he was already thinking 3 steps ahead. "Report," he said, his voice quiet but firm. "Sir, we're receiving a distress signal from the collective," Hana said. "It's fragmented, but the message is clear. There is under attack. They're asking for help." Admiral Park stood still for a long moment. Behind him, Commander Jin entered the room. Jin was younger than the Admiral, with sharp features and a quick mind. He served as the Admiral's tactical officer and most trusted advisor. Though Jin said, disbelief in his voice, "They hate us. They've spent decades telling the galaxy that humans are too dangerous to be allowed in civilized space." "I know," Admiral Park said. He walked to Hana's station and looked at the signal data. "Can you clean up the message?" Hana worked quickly. After a few moments, a voice filled the command center. It was high and musical, like wind chimes in a storm, but there was terror in that voice. "This is High Speaker of the Collective. Our world is burning, our fleet is destroyed. We beg anyone who can hear this message, please, we need help. Our children are dying, please." The message repeated, then it repeated again. Admiral Park closed his eyes. When he opened them, his decision was already made. "Contact the other galactic powers," he said. "Find out who else is responding." Jin worked at his console for several minutes. When he looked up, his face was grim. "No one, sir. The Empire says the territory is too dangerous. The Merchant League claims they don't have military resources. The Council of Seven issued a statement expressing concern but taking no action." "Cowards," Hana muttered under her breath. Admiral Park did not respond to her comment. Instead, he asked, "Do we know who is attacking them?" "Intel suggests it's the swarm," Jin said. "A locust-like species that consumes entire worlds for resources. They strip planets bare and move on. If they've targeted they won't stop until every resource is harvested, including themselves." The room fell silent. Admiral Park walked to the main, which showed a star map of the region. That was marked in red. It was far away. Getting there would mean pushing the fleet to its limits. "How long to reach them?" the Admiral asked. "If we leave now and push maximum speed, 32 hours, Jin answered. "But sir, they have made their feelings about humanity very clear. If we show up uninvited, there's no guarantee they won't see us as a second invasion force." "They're dying, Jin." "I know, sir, but our people might die too. The swarm doesn't negotiate. They don't surrender. If we go in there, we're committing to a full-scale battle." Admiral Park turned to face his tactical officer. "How many ships can we mobilize in the next hour?" Jin hesitated. 12, sir. The 7th Response Fleet is fully operational, but against hundreds of swarm vessels, 12 ships might not be enough. It will have to be enough. Hana watched the Admiral's face. She had served under him for 3 years. She had seen him make hard choices before, but this was different. This was a choice to risk human lives for a species that had rejected them. "Sir," she said carefully, "why?" Admiral Park looked at her. "Why what, Lieutenant? Why help them? They've spent 40 years calling us monsters. They've told the whole galaxy that humans are too dangerous to be trusted. If we go to save them and we fail, it proves everything they said about us. And if we succeed, they might not even thank us." The Admiral was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was soft but steady. "When I was young, my grandmother told me a story. She said that the measure of a person is not how they treat their friends. It's how they treat their enemies. It's easy to be kind to those who are kind to you. The real test is whether you can show mercy to those who have shown you none." He turned back to the star map. "They called us monsters. They called us dangerous. They said we were too savage to be part of civilized space. Maybe they were right about some of that. Humans are dangerous. We did evolve on a world that would kill most species in minutes." Admiral Park's jaw tightened. "But they forgot something important. Yes, we are dangerous. Yes, we are strong. But we choose what to do with that strength. And I choose to use it to protect those who cannot protect themselves, even if they hate me for it." He turned to face the room. "Alert all ships. The 7th Response Fleet mobilizes in 1 hour. Set course for the—" "And if they fire on us when we arrive?" Jin asked. "Then we show them what we really are," Admiral Park said. "Not the monsters they imagined. Something far more terrifying to their enemies. Humans who came to help." Hana felt something stir in her chest. Pride, maybe, or hope. She began transmitting the mobilization orders. Across the station, alarms began to sound. Crews rushed to their posts. Engines hummed to life as 12 warships prepared to fly into the unknown. They were going to save a species that hated them, and they were going to do it because it was the right thing to do. The fleet launched 1 hour later, disappearing into the darkness between stars. Behind them, the station fell quiet, but across the galaxy, whispers began to spread. The humans were moving. They had heard the cry for help. And they were coming. 12 ships moved in formation, their engines burning hot as they pushed toward territory. At the center of the formation flew the assault carrier Indomitable, the largest vessel in the 7th Response Fleet. Its captain, Min, stood on the bridge and watched the stars blur past. Min was 43 years old, with broad shoulders and hands that had seen both war and peace. He had joined the fleet at 18, fought in 3 border conflicts, and lost more friends than he liked to remember. But he had never questioned an order from Admiral Park. The man had earned his loyalty 100 times over. Still, this mission felt different. "Captain," his first officer said, "we're receiving updated intelligence from Fleet Command." Min nodded. "Put it on screen." The main flickered and an image appeared. It showed the swarm in detail. They were insect-like creatures, each one about the size of a human child, but they moved in groups of thousands and their ships numbered in the hundreds. The intelligence report called them a harvesting species. They did not build. They did not create. They only consumed. "The swarm has been active in the outer rim for decades," the first officer continued. "They've destroyed 17 worlds in the past 30 years. No species has ever successfully defended against a full-scale swarm assault." "Until now," Min said quietly. His first officer looked uncertain. "Sir, our fleet is powerful, but we're outnumbered at least 10 to 1, maybe more." "I know the numbers." Min turned away from the screen. "Gather the senior officers. I want a full tactical briefing in 1 hour." Down in the ship's lower decks, Sergeant First Class Shin Bai was running her team through drills. Bai was 31, with short black hair and eyes that never seemed to rest. She commanded the elite rescue unit attached to the Indomitable. Her job was simple: go into dangerous places, bring people out alive. "Listen up," she called to her team. "This mission is different from anything we've done before. We're not rescuing humans this time. We're rescuing—" One of her soldiers, a young man named Private Sung-ho, raised his hand. "Sergeant, what exactly are—" Bai pulled up an image on the training room's display. They were beautiful in a strange way. Their bodies were made of something like living crystal, thin and delicate. They stood about half the height of a human, with large eyes that reflected light like jewels. "They're fragile," Bai said. "More fragile than any species we've ever worked with. Their bones can break from a strong handshake. Their skin can crack from temperature changes that we wouldn't even notice. If you grab one too hard, you could kill it." The team exchanged nervous glances. "So we need to be careful," Sung-ho said. "We need to be perfect," Bai corrected. "Every piece of equipment has been modified: softer grips, temperature-controlled suits, padding on every surface that might touch a body. We're going to carry them like they're made of glass because they basically are." Another soldier spoke up. "Sergeant, why are we doing this? They have spent 40 years telling everyone that humans are monsters. They've blocked every attempt we've made at peace." Bai was quiet for a moment. "Let me tell you something, Private. When I was a kid, there was a boy in my neighborhood who bullied me every single day. He called me names. He threw rocks at me. He made my life miserable for years." She paused. "One day there was a fire in his house. Everyone else stood there and watched, but I ran inside and pulled him out. He was screaming and crying, and his whole world was falling apart. And you know what? I didn't think about all the times he hurt me. I just thought about the fact that he needed help." Bai looked at her team. "That's what being human means. We don't help people because they deserve it. We help people because they need it. They need us right now. That's enough." The training room fell silent. Then Sung-ho nodded slowly. "Understood, Sergeant." Meanwhile, in the medical bay, Dr. Nam was preparing for the worst. Was the chief medical officer of the Indomitable, a thin man with gentle hands and a mind that never stopped working. He had spent the last 12 hours studying everything known about biology. It was not encouraging. "Their bodies are crystalline in structure," he explained to his medical team. "That makes them incredibly beautiful but also incredibly vulnerable. They have no tolerance for the temperature and pressure conditions that humans find comfortable. They breathe a different mixture of gases. Their blood, if you can call it that, flows at a different rate than ours." "How do we treat them?" a young nurse asked. "Carefully," said. "I've designed specialized medical pods that can maintain environmental conditions. We'll need to keep them isolated from our normal atmosphere. Any exposure to human standard air could cause their bodies to crack and fail." The nurse looked worried. "Doctor, can we actually save them?" Thought about the question. "I don't know," he admitted, "but we're going to try. That's all any of us can do." The hours passed slowly as the fleet traveled. Soldiers checked their weapons. Medical teams prepared their equipment. Officers studied tactical plans. Everyone knew that what waited for them would be terrible. Then, 18 hours into the journey, a second signal came through. Captain Min was called to the bridge to hear it. The message was from but it was different from the first distress call. This one was not asking for help. It was reporting the end. "Our defense fleet has been destroyed," the message said. "The swarm has broken through our orbital defenses. They are landing on our planet in waves. Estimated time until complete planetary collapse is 40 hours. This may be our final transmission. To anyone who can hear us, please remember that the once existed. Please remember that we were here." The message ended. Captain Min felt his hands tighten into fists. He did the math in his head. They had 32 hours until arrival. They had 40 hours until extinction. 8 hours. That was how much time they would have to save an entire world. He opened a channel to Admiral Park's flagship. "Admiral, we've received the updated situation report." "I know," Park's voice came back. "Push the engines harder. We need every minute we can get." "Sir, if we push any harder, we risk burning out the drives." "Then we burn them out. We can build new engines. We can't build new." Min nodded even though the Admiral couldn't see him. "Understood, sir. All ships, increase speed to maximum emergency power." The fleet surged forward, engines screaming against the void. In her quarters, Sergeant Bai lay on her bunk and stared at the ceiling. She thought about the children who were probably crying right now, wondering if anyone would come to save them. She thought about the terror they must be feeling as the swarm descended on their world. She closed her eyes and made a silent promise. "We're coming, hold on. The monsters are coming to save you." And for the first time in her career, she hoped that the aliens they were rushing to save would understand that sometimes monsters were exactly what you needed. Admiral Park Ho stood on the bridge of his flagship and looked at the destruction before him. The home system had been beautiful once. Intelligence reports spoke of crystal space stations that caught the light of their star and scattered rainbows across the void. They spoke of elegant ships that moved like dancers through the cosmos. Now there was only wreckage. Broken stations drifted in pieces. Destroyed ships floated in clouds of debris. And surrounding the planet below, hundreds of swarm vessels moved like a plague of locusts, descending toward the surface in wave after wave. "My God," Lieutenant Hana whispered from her communication station. "There's so many of them." Commander Jin ran the numbers on his tactical display. "I'm counting over 300 swarm vessels, sir. Mostly smaller attack craft, but there are at least 20 capital ships in that formation." "What about the planet?" Admiral Park asked. "Fires across 3 continents. The swarm has established landing zones in major population centers. They're already harvesting." Park felt his jaw tighten. Harvesting. Such a clean word for such a terrible thing. They didn't just kill their victims. They collected them, stored them in organic pods for later consumption. They were being treated like crops. "Open a channel to the government," he ordered. "Let them know we're here." Hana worked her console. A moment later, a face appeared on the. It was, with crystalline features that caught the bridge lights and reflected them in broken patterns. This was High Speaker, the leader of the collective. Her huge eyes were wide with something that might have been fear or shock or both. "What is this?" she demanded. "Humans? Why are humans in our space?" Admiral Park kept his voice calm. "High Speaker, we received your distress signal. We came to help." "Help?" His voice cracked like glass under pressure. "We did not ask for help from. You have no right to be here. Your presence will only make things worse." "With respect, High Speaker, things cannot get much worse. Your fleet is destroyed. Your people are dying, and not a single other species in the galaxy answered your call." Flinched as if she had been struck. "The others will come. The Empire, the Council of 7, they will send forces." "No," Park said gently. "They won't. We intercepted their communications. They've decided that helping you is too dangerous. They're going to let the swarm finish what it started and then establish quarantine zones around your former territory." The High Speaker was silent. On the screen behind her, Park could see chaos. Running, fires burning. The sounds of screaming filtered through the transmission. "You came," said finally. Her voice was small, like a child who had just learned that the world was not what she thought it was. "But why? We have never been kind to your people. We called you monsters. We blocked every attempt at peace." "You asked for help," Admiral Park said simply. "We came. That's all that matters right now." Before could respond, an alarm blared across the bridge. "Sir, the swarm has noticed us," Jin reported. 30 attack craft breaking formation and heading our way. They're scanning our ships." Park watched the tactical display. The ships were small and fast, designed for overwhelming their prey with numbers. They had probably never encountered human vessels before. Good. Surprise was a weapon too. All ships battle formations, Park ordered. Weapons free on my command. The 12 human warships spread out into an attack pattern. On the watched with wide eyes. Admiral, you cannot fight the swarm, she said. Their numbers are too great. Even our fleet, which was larger than yours, fell in hours. Your fleet was built to fight civilized wars, Park replied. Our fleet was built by. The first wave of ships reached weapons range. They opened fire with energy weapons that had cracked crystal hulls like eggshells. The beams struck the human ships and splashed across reinforced armor plating. The human ships barely shook. Damage report, Jin called out. Minor scoring on the outer hull, came the reply. No penetration, no casualties. Admiral Park allowed himself a small smile. Human ships were built to survive. They were built for a species that evolved on a world of crushing gravity, violent weather, and constant danger. They were over-engineered for every possible threat because humans expected the universe to try to kill them at every turn. Return fire, Park ordered. The human fleet spoke with a voice of thunder. Fired solid projectiles at speeds that they had never faced. Missiles streaked across the void, their warheads designed to punch through asteroid rock. Energy weapons built to fight in the harsh radiation of Earth's sun cut through swarm hulls like they were paper. 30 attack craft became expanding clouds of debris in less than 2 minutes. Onda stared in disbelief. Impossible, she breathed. How? Earth is a hard world, Admiral Park said. It makes hard people and hard ships. The swarm reacted to the destruction of their advance force. More ships began breaking off from the planet, turning to face this unexpected threat. The nest commander, a larger who controlled the swarm through biological signals, sent out a command pulse. All harvesting operations paused. The new enemy needed to be evaluated. Captain Min's voice came through on the fleet channel. Admiral, the swarm is reorganizing. They're sending a major force our way. I'm counting 100 ships. Then let's thin those numbers, Park replied. All carriers launch fighters, all cruisers advance to engagement range. Show them what can do. The assault carrier Indomitable opened its launch bays, and human fighters poured into space like angry hornets. They were small and fast, piloted by men and women who had grown up playing video games with reflexes measured in milliseconds. They dove into the swarm formation and began tearing it apart from within. They had never fought an enemy like this. Their weapons, designed to crack crystalline ships, struggled to damage human armor. Their tactics, built around overwhelming fragile opponents with numbers, failed against pilots who could sustain G-forces that would kill any other species. Admiral Park watched the battle unfold on his tactical display. Human ships pushing forward, swarm ships falling back. For the first time in the history of the swarm, they were being matched. High Speaker, Park said, turning back to the transmission. We're going to clear a path to your planet. Prepare your people for evacuation. We're sending rescue teams to the surface. Looked at him with eyes that no longer held fear or suspicion. Instead, there was something new, something that might have been the beginning of hope. Admiral Park, she said slowly, I believe I owe you an apology. You can apologize later, Park said. Right now, let's focus on keeping your people alive. He closed the channel and turned to his bridge crew. Outside, the battle raged. Human ships against swarm ships, fire and death and destruction across the stars. But for the first time since the invasion began, they had a chance. And the humans were just getting started. Sergeant First Class Shinbai gripped her safety harness as the small craft shook and rattled. Outside the viewport, she could see the sky burning orange and red. Anti-aircraft fire streaked past, but the human pilots were good. They dodged and weaved through the chaos with skills born from a lifetime of training. 30 seconds to landing zone, the pilot announced. Bai looked at her team. 10 soldiers, each one trained for rescue operations in the most dangerous conditions possible. They wore modified armor with soft contact surfaces and temperature regulators. Their weapons were loaded and ready, but their most important tool was their training. "Remember," Bai said over the team channel, "they are fragile. Handle them like they're made of glass. If you have to carry one, support the entire body. Don't grip, don't squeeze, don't rush. Slow and steady saves lives." "Yes, Sergeant," came the unified response. The dropship hit the ground hard. The rear door opened, and Bai led her team out into hell. The city had been beautiful once. Crystal towers had risen toward the sky, catching sunlight and turning it into rainbows. Gardens of delicate flowers had grown in perfect patterns. Music had filled the air from singing crystals that they used for communication. Now the towers were shattered, the gardens were burning, and the only sounds were screams and the clicking of mandibles. "Move out," Bai ordered. "Head toward the central district. That's where the largest population concentration was reported." Her team advanced through the ruined streets. The gravity here was lighter than Earth, and Bai found herself having to adjust her movements to avoid bouncing with each step. The air was thin too, barely enough oxygen for human lungs. Her helmet filtered and concentrated it so she could breathe. The atmosphere would have killed an unprotected human in minutes, but to Bai, it just felt like a light workout. "Contact ahead," one of her soldiers reported. "Patrol 12 hostiles." Bai raised her fist, signaling a halt. She peered around a fallen pillar and saw them. 12 warriors, each one about chest-high on a human, with hard shells and sharp mandibles. They were dragging a group toward a collection pod. The crystalline aliens were crying, their voices making sounds like breaking glass. "Take them," Bai said. Her team opened fire. They were fast, but humans were faster. The fight lasted less than 10 seconds. 12 fell, and not a single human was touched. Bai approached the captured carefully. There were 7 of them huddled together in terror. When they saw her, their fear only seemed to grow. "Please," one of them said in broken human speech, "please do not hurt us." Bai removed her helmet so they could see her face. "We're not here to hurt you," she said gently. "We're here to help. Can you walk?" They stared at her. "You are human," one of them said. "Yes, but you came to save us." Bai smiled. "That's right, now can you walk? We need to get you somewhere safe." They could walk, barely. Bai assigned 2 of her soldiers to escort them to the evacuation point, while she led the rest of her team deeper into the city. They found more survivors as they went. Some were hiding in collapsed buildings. Others were fleeing from patrols. Each time, Bai's team cleared the threats and gathered the survivors, moving them towards safety with careful, gentle hands. Then they reached the central plaza, and everything changed. They had set up a harvesting station there. Hundreds were trapped in organic pods, their bodies slowly being drained of nutrients. Workers moved between the pods, checking their prey, preparing them for transport to the swarm ships above. And among the pods, Bai saw something that made her blood burn hot. Children, tiny and delicate, crying for parents who could not save them. "Sergeant," Private Sung Ho said, his voice tight with anger, "what do we do?" Bai counted the enemy, at least 50 plus whatever reinforcements might arrive. Her team was 10 soldiers. The odds were not good. But the children were crying. "We attack," she said, "hard and fast. Priority is freeing the prisoners. Sung Ho, you handle the pod releases. Everyone else keep the off him." "That's a lot of bugs, Sergeant." "Then we'll need a lot of bullets." Bai checked her weapon. "Move." The attack was brutal. Humans were not stronger than pound for pound, but they were faster, smarter, and far more determined. Bai moved through the enemy like a storm, her weapon firing in controlled bursts that dropped warriors before they could react. Sung Ho reached the first pod and began cutting it open. A tumbled out, weak but alive. He moved to the next pod, then the next. A warrior charged it by, mandibles snapping. She dodged left, grabbed its arm, and used its own momentum to throw it into a wall. Before it could recover, she put 2 rounds through its head. More were coming. She could hear them clicking in the distance, calling for reinforcements. They had minutes, maybe less. "Work faster, Sung-ho." "I'm trying, Sergeant." Then Bai heard a small voice. "Help me." She turned. A child was trapped under a fallen piece of machinery, too weak to free herself. The child's crystalline body was cracked in places, leaking fluid that sparkled in the dim light. Bai ran to her. She dropped to her knees and carefully, so carefully, lifted the machinery away. The child looked up at her with eyes full of pain and fear. "I've got you," Bai said. "I've got you, little one." She picked up the child with one arm, cradling the small body against her chest. With her other hand, she raised her weapon and kept firing at the approaching. Sung-ho status. Last pod is open. All survivors are free. Then move. Everyone fall back to extraction point. The team ran. Bai carried the child while firing her weapon behind her, covering the retreat. Fell. Human soldiers fell back in good order, protecting the freed prisoners with their bodies. They made it to the extraction point just as the drop ships returned. Dr. Nam was waiting with medical teams, already preparing to receive casualties. "How many?" he asked as the survivors poured off the transports. "Over 200, Bai reported. Many injured. The children are in the worst shape." Doctor looked at the child still cradled in her arms. "I'll take her." Bai hesitated. The child had grabbed onto her armor and would not let go. "It's okay," she whispered. "The doctor is going to help you. You're safe now." Slowly, the child released her grip. Doctor took her with hands that were infinitely gentle and carried her toward the medical bay. Bai watched them go, then she turned back toward the city. There were more survivors out there, more children crying in the dark. She reloaded her weapon and headed back into hell. Behind her, an elder watched the human soldiers moving with awe in his ancient eyes. These were the creatures his people had called monsters. These were the they had feared for 40 years. And they were risking everything to save lives. The elder bowed his head, and, for the first time in his long life, prayed to whatever gods existed to watch over the humans fighting in his streets. Admiral Park Ho watched the tactical display as wave after wave of swarm ships broke off from the planet and fled toward the edge of the system. They had lost over 60% of their fleet. They had never experienced anything like this. The nest commander was broadcasting a signal on all frequencies, a warning to any other swarm forces that might be listening. "Avoid the Death World species. Avoid the humans. They are mad. They fight without reason. They protect what is not theirs. They are mad." The message repeated over and over as the swarm fled. Admiral Park allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. Then he turned to Commander Jin. "Damage report." Jin's face was grim. "3 ships destroyed, sir. The Resolute, the Starward, and the Morning Light. Another 4 ships heavily damaged but operational. Casualty count is still coming in, but we're looking at over 200 dead." 200. Park closed his eyes. 200 humans who had given their lives to save a species that had called them monsters. 200 families who would receive the worst news imaginable. "Make sure we have names for everyone," Park said quietly. "I want to write to each family personally." "Yes, sir." Outside, the battle was ending. Human ships moved through the wreckage, rescuing survivors from escape pods and damaged vessels. Drop ships continued to travel between the fleet and the surface, bringing up more and more refugees. "Sir," Lieutenant Hana called out, "we're receiving a communication request from High Speaker. She wants to come aboard." Park raised an eyebrow. A leader voluntarily boarding a human ship. That would have been unthinkable 3 days ago. "Grant her request. I'll meet her in the main hangar." 20 minutes later, Admiral Park stood in the Indomitable's hangar bay as a shuttle touched down. The bay had been specially modified for this meeting. The temperature lowered, the atmosphere adjusted to something that could breathe more comfortably. Small courtesies for a guest who had never expected to receive any. The shuttle door opened, and High Speaker emerged. She was smaller than Park had expected. Her crystalline body caught the light of the hangar and scattered it in soft patterns. Her huge eyes were wet with something that looked like tears, though Park wasn't sure if could cry the way humans did. Behind her came a group of elders, the remaining leaders of a shattered civilization. Approached Park and stopped a few feet away. For a long moment, they simply looked at each other, human and crystalline being, two species that should have been enemies but had found themselves standing on the same side. Admiral Park said finally. Her voice was soft, musical, but heavy with emotion. "I do not know where to begin." "You don't need to begin anywhere," Park replied. "You asked for help, we came, that's all there is to it." "No," shook her head, a human gesture she must have learned from somewhere. "That is not all there is to it. My people have spent 40 years telling the galaxy that humans are dangerous, that you are too savage to be part of civilized society, that you are monsters to be feared and avoided." She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice cracked like stressed glass. "We were wrong. We were so terribly wrong." Park said nothing, he simply listened. "Your people came when no one else would," continued. "Your soldiers died protecting our children. Your doctors worked through the night to save lives that we had told them were not worth saving." She looked up at him with those huge, wet eyes. "How can we ever repay what you have done?" Admiral Park thought about the question for a long moment. He thought about the 200 humans who had died in the battle. He thought about Sergeant Shin Bai, who had carried a child through a while fighting off with one hand. He thought about Dr. Nam, who had not slept in 30 hours because there were always more patients to save. "You don't owe us anything," he said finally. Blinked in confusion. "But we must. Such a debt cannot go unpaid." "It's not a debt," Park said. "You were in danger. We had the power to help. That's all that matters. That's all that has ever mattered." He stepped forward, and to the shock of everyone present, he offered his hand. "But if you want to do something, you could start by letting us be friends. Real friends, not just allies of convenience. The galaxy is a dangerous place. It's easier to face it together than alone." Stared at his hand. Among physical contact was rare and meaningful. To touch another was to trust them completely. And here was a human, offering his hand in friendship. Slowly, carefully, she reached out and took it. Her crystalline fingers felt cool and delicate against his skin. Park was suddenly very aware of how easily he could break her hand if he squeezed too hard. But he didn't squeeze. He held her gently, the way his soldiers had learned to hold their rescues. "Friends," said, testing the word. "Yes, I believe I would like that." Across the galaxy, news of the battle spread. They had answered a call for help. They had fought the swarm and won. They had saved a species that had rejected them for decades. Other species began to take notice. The Empire, which had refused to help sent nervous inquiries to human diplomats. The Council of Seven requested a meeting to discuss expanded relations. Even the Merchant League, which cared only for profit, began to calculate the benefits of human friendship. But in the medical bay of the Indomitable, none of that mattered. Sergeant Shin Bai sat beside a small bed where the child she had rescued was resting. The child's name was Crystal Light of Dawn, and she had lost her entire family in the invasion. She had no one left. "Why?" Crystal Light of Dawn asked, her voice small and fragile. "Why did you come to save us?" Bai thought about the question. She thought about all the speeches she had heard about duty and honor and humanity's place in the galaxy. None of them felt right. "Because someone was crying," she said finally, "and we could hear them." Crystal Light of Dawn was quiet for a long time. Then she reached out with a tiny crystalline hand and touched Bai's arm. My people called your people monsters, she said. I know. They were wrong. Crystal Light of Dawn's huge eyes looked up at her with something that might have been the beginning of love. You are not monsters. You are guardians. Bai felt something warm spread through her chest. She smiled and gently covered the child's hand with her own. Get some rest, she said. When you wake up, I'll still be here. Outside, the stars burned bright and cold. The swarm was gone. They were saved. And somewhere in the darkness between worlds, a message was spreading. The humans were protectors. They were guardians. And if you were in danger, if you had nowhere else to turn, if all hope seemed lost, you could call out into the void. And the monsters would come to save you.